Hey everyone, it's Jake Clark and John Schneider from Fargo 3D Printing. I believe week 7 or episode 7 of the podcast.
Yep.
So today what we're going to be talking about is we just got back on Saturday from Santa Clara from the Inside 3D Printing Show. So we're going to talk about Lulzbot, their new mini that came out. We're going to hit some trade show highlights, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we might go a little bit long today because there's a lot to cover in this last trade show. Yep. So when we were on the drive down there, we drove all the way down there.
It was a long drive, a very long drive.
With 3 of us in a car.
A very long drive.
So we stopped at the Lulzbot facility. So we went from Fargo down to the Lulzbot facility and checked out that. So really cool down there is they're coming out with the new Mini. We got to see the Taz 4. We got to see their big printer room, their R&D facility, their manufacturing line. It was great. I'm a manufacturing guy. And I got really stoked to see all of it. My favorite part was seeing the room full of 3D printers all working, all the Taz. I don't know which Tazes they were.
Yeah, I think it's the, just a variety of Taz builds. I think anywhere from the Taz 1 all the way up through the Taz 4, making more parts for more printers. I think they have somewhere around 110, 120 printers all going at the same time. So one, it gets to be a little toasty in there because you have that many printers going with the heated bed and their extruder, and of course they got the place well ventilated with that many machines in there. You kind of need to have it. And it was really cool how they had everything administered. They were running all of the machines from just one computer. I'm not entirely sure how they did it. I think they're using a tool called BotQ or some variation of that. So it's a very, very interesting to see how they're running all of their machines.
Yeah, and we got to pick up our own Lulzbot Taz 4, which was awesome. We've been printing some Ninja Flex with it. So that's a great material. We'll get a little bit into that a little bit later. But yeah, it's just a really, really great machine to carry. So we started carrying the Lulzbot about a month ago or 2 months ago, about a month ago now. So we got our own in right now. So we're playing with that, working with it. John's kind of the point man. John and Aaron are kind of the point man for tech specs and everything on the Lulzbot. But so the Mini. The Mini we picked it up in Colorado and drove it out there. So the Mini was the, Lulzbot's release at the show. So its first public appearance, I believe, or more.
Yeah, and the thing about Lulzbot, everything that they do is open source. So people have been able to see the design documents for this new Mini ever since, I want to say, since March or April of this last year. So it wasn't exactly a secret what they were going to be unveiling, but as far as the general public being able to see the printer running, I mean, this is the first time a lot of people had seen it running, period. And it has a really cool startup sequence that's a little different than pretty much any other desktop printer I've seen out there. So when it starts printing, it'll do 2 things before it actually starts laying down filament. The first thing it does once it gets up to temperature is there's a cleaning strip. So the nozzle will actually go run itself back and forth, I think about half a dozen to a dozen times to make sure that any leftover plastic is scraped off. So that way when it starts laying down plastic, it's nice and clean. But it also makes sure that the nozzle is clean for the auto leveling sequence. Auto leveling isn't new to 3D printers or to desktop 3D printers, but the way that the Lulzbot Mini handles it is a little different. So instead of having a completely separate probe which goes and detects the layer height in different areas of the bed, there are actually 4 metal discs, and by the nozzle touching each of those discs, it'll complete a circuit, and then the nozzle knows where it's at in space, so it knows how level or unlevel the bed is. Then as it's printing, it will automatically compensate for any unevenness as it's printing. So it's also a very fast sequence. I know we've seen other printers that have an auto leveling or an assisted leveling sequence, but it's very time consuming. The Taz, or excuse me, not the Taz, the Mini, I'd say it takes maybe between everything 45 to 60 seconds tops. And I think they're working on improving the speed on that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the Mini. So it has that first sequence. Something else that Lulzbot is doing is they're creating a custom version of Cura. People that are out there that have used slicers before, you might be familiar with Cura. It's most closely associated with the Ultimaker 3D printer. So what Lulzbot is doing is taking all of the open source elements of Cura, adding in some of their own open source elements, changing the UI a little bit, making sure that it matches the Lulzbot brand. And they're going to be releasing that when they release the Lulzbot Mini. So instead of having to run your STL file through Slicer and then load it into something like Print Run and send it directly from there, you're going to be able to send it all from a really nice, simple user interface. And it'll have presets for all the different material types.
Yeah, and actually has a NinjaFlex handle on it. So that was kind of
Yeah.
cool to see an actual real world application for it. Right on the Mini, and it's a cute little machine, honestly.
Yeah, so I
um,
mean, it has a 6 inch by 6 inch by 6 inch by 6 inch build area, which for its price is, I mean, it's exceptionally good, especially given the build quality. The price on it is $13.50, so it actually comes in a little less than the MakerBot Replicator Mini, but with a much larger build area, and I'd say much more capable. They have a new version of their hot end in there as well. It's an all-metal hot end, so it's able to handle materials up to 300 degrees Celsius. So that means it's going to be able to print materials like polycarbonate, as well as all the other ones like ABS, PLA, HIPS, Laywood, Laybrick, T-Glaze, Tolman 618, Tolman 645. Those are both nylon filaments, copper fill, bronze fill. I mean, it has about a dozen different materials that it can print.
Yeah, and that's exciting because pretty much all the other ones on the market that don't they don't have all those different materials, especially the NinjaFlex. That's we're actually going to get into that next because
right.
So
well,
that's
and one thing with the NinjaFlex. So when we talk about this, the Mini, it can't. It will be able to print with the NinjaFlex out of the gate, just not very well. Now, when you look at something like the Lulzbot Taz 4, it has a specialized extruder just for NinjaFlex, and it prints beautifully with that. But with the Mini, they're working on having swappable heads, just like on the Taz 4, so you'll be able to swap one in that can handle printing NinjaFlex.
Yeah, so some of the show highlights. So we're going to start out with NinjaFlex first. So we got a couple parts here. We got a little bike handle that we printed last night. So it's very, very durable. And as a kid, I would have liked to have one of these on my bike versus what I had because they always kept falling off. And then we also have a little Lego brick here. We haven't. I don't know if it'll sit to the other ones as nicely, but it's just cool to see how the material, it doesn't delaminate at all, or not at all right now. If you get into some of the wider pieces, I don't see anything on this one, but I've noticed that some of the larger prints can delaminate sometimes, but it's still a very, very durable plastic and cool to print with.
It sticks very well to itself. For example, the print settings that we had, I think the extruder was at 230 degrees Celsius and the heated bed was turned off on the Taz 4, and it sticks really well. There's no warping that we've ran into yet, and I don't even think it can warp even if I mean, it would have to be pretty extreme conditions before it would warp.
Yeah, and some other things that I found interesting at the trade show was they had a giant scanning booth. I did not get scanned, but they had a giant scanning booth that you could stand in, and the cameras would rotate around you and make a 3D image of you. The other one was a couple DLP and SLA desktop printers. Looked at a few of those. Form Labs was there, so it was cool to see what their machines look like in person, and also what some of their parts look like. 3D.
And while we're on Form Labs, they actually released 2 new materials while we were there. So one of them is designed for doing jewelry stuff, so it'll burn out. So for think like a lost wax casting type of situation, where the material that they've come up with, it'll burn out cleanly. Then another one is a flexible material, so it's a flexible resin. We handled that quite a bit, and it started to break apart, but they did have it printed on some pretty fine settings, so it was just smaller parts, so it's not too surprising. It was still really flexible, though.
Yeah, and I got to see the folks from 3dprint.com. Who else was there? There was a couple 3D Systems machines, so there's a couple MJPs out there that we got to take a look at. The most interesting, so there's 2 interesting things, and John, you can speak to both of these, was Autodesk released the Spark at this trade show, as well as you got to talk to a guy that's making toys, 3D printing toys. So if you want to talk about both of those, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so on the Autodesk side of things, so Autodesk revealed, not Spark exactly. So Spark is the 3D printing platform that they're developing. They announced this past spring. Details have been trickling out here and there. Their thing is they want the Spark platform to be open source. So they're creating this whole platform to build around. I think that's including design software, file formats, and then a printer itself. The printer that they're designing, it's called Ember. right now, so that was a pretty new announcement. I didn't have a chance to attend his Jeff Kowalski from Autodesk. I didn't have a chance to attend his keynote, but I heard he made some waves in the industry. He talked about how 3D printing right now sucks, and from what I heard when he said that, the air kind of got sucked out of the room. And what he brought up is that people are the 3D printing industry is very maturely immature. So he believes that 3D printing isn't anywhere close to what it's capable of, but what it's capable of now, manufacturers have gotten very well developed at that. So think your fused deposition modeling, your FDM style 3D printers, those are getting very, very good. They're really starting to reach the limits of what they're technically able to do. And now it's, okay, well, what's the next level? Jeff really believes that eventually everyone will have a 3D printer in their home. I believe that's true as well. I think he and I differ on what the capabilities are going to be for those desktop printers. So that's the Autodesk Spark platform and the Ember 3D printer. They don't have a release date set yet, but he said that there should be more details coming soon. One of the other booths that we spent some time at the Expo was, and I'm having a tough time remembering the name, but I think it was something called Cramu 3D. What this guy does is designs toys that are 3D printed. This goes above and beyond anything that you've probably seen on Thingiverse. I mean, these are very intricate, very well finished designs. One example, and this is a very simple example, he actually took a combination of NinjaFlex and ABS. And so imagine a base layer of a hand in NinjaFlex, so it's nice and rubbery and smooth and flexible. And then he prints in PLA or ABS the bones of a hand. So now you have essentially a floppy hand. It's like a skeletal hand. He also had one of the bigger prints was, I think it was from about 50 different pieces. It was this cheetah that had articulating joints, and I mean, I'd say it was about maybe about 2 feet long, about a foot and a half tall. I mean, really quite an impressive print. I think he said that the print time involved in something like that was between 60 and 100 hours. And I don't remember exactly, but...
And it looked nice. I mean,
right.
Even from far away and up close, it was a really nice print.
Yep, very colorful prints. I mean, it looked like something that if I were a kid, well... I'm not a kid anymore, but I still wanted to buy one and try it out.
You're still a kid at heart. We all are.
Yeah.
But no, they did. I mean, he had one actually sitting on the table that was running, and it actually had motors in it. It had a USB cable hooked up to it, so running off. I think it might have been tethered to power, but it was still pretty cool to see the different things that you can come up with when you 3D print real toys. So it's not really such a far-fetched idea that kids could be playing with 3D printed toys in the next couple of years, potentially, right, if not the next couple months. But that was another cool booth. I'm trying to think of the other ones that were there. Toy Builders Labs was there at one of the booths, so talked to them. There was...
I mean, there were a ton of booths. I don't think we're going to have a chance to list all of them.
No.
And I mean, if you want to see everyone that was there, because it's very possible Jake and I are misnaming some of these, it should be up on the Inside 3D Printing Expo website under the Santa Clara event from 2014. You can see the full list of who was there, hit the links that you can visit their websites, check them out, see what they're up to.
And 3dprintingindustry.com is doing, they did a bunch of stories because they actually sponsored the event. So they did a bunch of different stories on a couple different booths around there. They're still doing stories this week, or this past week. They'll be doing stories in the next coming week. So, and one story that they're going to be doing is actually on us. So as we were down there, we actually released one of our new products from a sister company of ours called 3Dom USA. So what 3Dom USA is, it's our own. Well, it's not Fargo 3Ds, but it's a separate company. It's actually its own brand of filament. So the nice thing, or the cool thing about this, is the product is completely sustainable. Everything from the filament to the spool to the packaging, everything's sustainable and recyclable. So the filament right now is going to start out as PLA and ABS, both 1.75 or 3 millimeter. I'm not sure on the colors yet, but we're going to start out with PLA and ABS. The spool itself is really interesting. So the spool is actually out of, it's a PLA and flax fiber compound. So it's a blend of both. It's really nice. We'll see if we can get a picture up there for you guys to take a look at it. But it's a really interesting spool. It's really cool. The next thing with that is we are the first US-based manufacturer to use what's called Ingeo. Ingeo is kind of the cream of the crop of the bioplastics world. If you have the branding of Ingeo, you have something that says this is sustainable, this comes from a renewable source of plants, in our case corn-based products, so starch-based, and we'll be the first U.S. manufacturer 3D filament to have that branding. We'll be one of the only ones to have it. And NatureWorks doesn't just kind of hand this out. They don't really hand it out at all. You kind of got to earn it. So we've earned it to have it here in the United States. So that's exciting to have on the product. Like I said, the packaging is going to be sustainable. We're looking for a Q1 release date. Check out the website. I believe it's 3dumusa.com.
Yep.
Sign up for the newsletter on there, as well as I believe in the next coming months we'll have kind of a pre-order kind of thing where you can go and pick what colors you want and get an idea of what kind of colors we're going to offer, get a feel of what quality is. So when we say quality, it's not only the Ingeo branding and that recipe, it's also the tolerances and the consistency of those tolerance of the filament over the length of the spool. We got some announcements that we'll be making in the next couple months regarding those tolerances. I don't want to make those right now just because we're still in the development of a couple things, but we'll have some exciting announcements in regards to the filament in the next coming months. So like I said, look for that Q1, sign up for the newsletter so you guys can follow that. We'll be talking about it a little bit more as things get closer to that release date. So closing out the end here, I'm actually wearing a KNDS 96.3 FM shirt today. The guy behind the camera, Eric Faldy, is a volunteer DJ at this station, and what they're doing right now is they've been 10 years in broadcasting, and they're raising money for new equipment. So I want to give a shout out to them. Go check out their Indiegogo. They're going to have a huge birthday party bash this coming summer. So check that out. If you can support them, that'd be awesome. I think that concludes podcast number 7.
Yeah, and actually, just to jump back to the 3D USA filament for a second. So on the website, you can actually request a free sample of the filament.
Yes.
So as we get going with manufacturing, I mean, we are standing behind the quality. I mean, we think that is something that will really put us apart. It's not going to be some cheap, quickly made filament. It's going to be high quality stuff. I mean, if you're 3D printing, the stuff that you put in your machine determines how well your 3D print is going to turn out. We're even going to go so far as on a per spool basis showing, hey, here's what the tolerances were on this, because that's how strongly we believe in the quality of our filament. So definitely hit the website, request a free sample. As we get the samples made up, we'll start sending those out so you can test it for yourselves. But like Jake said, I think that wraps up episode 7. So on behalf of Jake and I, thanks for watching. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Also subscribe to us on YouTube, and coming soon we're going to have our Instagram account set up. So I think on Instagram we're going to be Fargo 3D printing. So all right, thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Bye. I feel pretty, oh so pretty.
It's so squishy. It's a squishy Lego brick.